Welcome to the Executive Hustle podcast, where I am your host, Kirsten Urich, speaker, author, retired CEO, mother of four, and recovering workaholic. Explore with Central Pennsylvania local executives what it takes to lead well, live well, and learn well. Understanding that leaders cannot survive, let alone thrive, without a spirit of curiosity, a discipline of accountability, and a disposition for vulnerability. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Executive Hustle podcast. We have Fali, Chief Executive Officer of Helping Hands Family, an organization that provides autism services across 5 states in 40 clinics and serving over 900 children this year. Welcome, Fali.
Thank you, Kirsten. Happy to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you. Tell me, what is inspiring you and what is keeping you up?
I'd say what inspires me and us is the work that the team does. We get, Kirsten, you know this because you've been in the field yourself. We get some just heartwarming letters from parents who described how our team and the work they have done has changed their life, their own life, the life of the child that we are working with. Sometimes it's the life of the siblings and other family members too. And that has just been, I've been lucky to be in healthcare all my life, and we've had, really gratifying impact in many different roles. This one, I would say, has been the most gratifying and the most impactful because of our ability to help so many families.
Yeah. So I love that you said how gratifying it is and your journey across healthcare. So you started in, was it dialysis or veterinary?
Correct.
So it
I
started in
started in
dialysis.
dialysis,
Mm-hmm.
and I spent 35 years there. So that's pretty much most of my life.
Yeah.
And then I spent a few years in veterinary care, which was amazing and interesting. And I hold to this day that the veterinarians and the veterinary technicians and
Mm-hmm.
team members are probably the most compassionate people genuinely compassionate
Yeah.
people I have ever met, including, what I've done in the past and since then as well. But when I look at the impact on young minds, young children, and how it will affect their trajectory in the future and what it does for their families,
Yeah.
it's the reason that I think this one has been the most gratifying
Yeah.
role I've ever had.
You are changing lives.
Yes, it's our mission statement as well. We change lives.
I didn't even read it before today. So, how did you get from dialysis to veterinary to autism? On the surface, I don't see a link between those three, but maybe I'm missing something.
Well, no, I don't think you are. It's not an easy transition. Other than once you get to know me, I have an innate curiosity and I get bored easily. And so
Mm,
while I was in dialysis for 35 years, none of it was in more than 5 years in the same role at any place, and
okay.
sometimes a little less than that, right? Because I wanted to go to different places, do different things, work with different teams, learn different skills. I started in dialysis as a technician, and I used to do inventory for this company, and then moved into other roles as well. So having been in dialysis for a long time, having learned a lot about it, it was really interesting to me to be able to change um, industries altogether. So still in healthcare,
Hmm.
pet healthcare is still healthcare. It's just different
Hmm.
rules and regulations and a different population you're treating. Loved the people, as I said, that I worked with there too. And then when it literally that just ended, that stint just ended, the job ended, and
Hmm.
I was offered this opportunity to finish out my career in a role that helps kids, and it was really hard to pass up.
Mm. As you think about all three of these areas, what are some common leadership principles that you can identify as being, working in all three of these areas?
Interesting question. I would say that one of the things I learned early on, not when I was a technician in dialysis, but when I started um, working in administrative and management roles, And a lot of my mentors taught me this, and I owe them, doctors, nurses, others too. I owe them a lot for this philosophy. Um, and it was to start with the patient, right? What does the
Mm.
patient need? And to have this inordinate focus on the needs of the client, in this case, the patient, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that also transcends then into pet care. Like what do the
Yeah.
pet need? And
Right.
the client who brings them in, right, is also what do they need? And then certainly in autism services as well, we say, I think you may know this already, Kirsten, we say at Helping Hands Family, take care of the kids,
Mm-hmm.
take care of the team, and the business will take care of itself.
Yes.
And that statement comes from these years of applying that philosophy without having those words to go along with it, but applying that philosophy in my time in healthcare.
Take care of the client, take care of the team, and the business will take care of itself. Wow.
The principle that's stood the test of time.
That's powerful. It reminds me of your other saying that I've heard you say, which is results through relationships. Where did that come from?
Growing as a manager and a leader, I realized that there were two aspects of relationships that I had underestimated. So I'll say, just uh, I love people, and that's been innate for quite a while. So building relationships has never been an issue for me. But knowing which ones to nurture and actively going out and seeking new relationships
Mm-hmm.
for the purpose of helping the team better, helping the business better, was not something that I really appreciated, probably until I was well into my management years at the dialysis company. And I realized that reaching out to my peers in the competition, right? So I would reach out to my biggest competitors. We would have a quarterly meeting. We'd go grab coffee. We'd have lunch together. What we realized is there were things that we could share that really helped patients, helped the team members, helped the business, helped the community, that we were able to do without having to worry about somehow divulging some, state secrets.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I realized as I grow older and do this more, that I never appreciated the ability to connect people as a result of having done this. So the next step beyond that, it had a couple of advantages, right? One, I learned more, other people learned more. We helped each other out whenever we could. Literally, I'll give you an example. In Portland, Oregon, we provided in an instant emergency supplies to our great biggest competitor because they ran out of supplies at some point and really needed them to be able to dialyze their patients the next morning, and we sent them over without blinking an eye, right? So these are some of the real advantages. But then I also realized that connecting people, so taking the three competitors that I knew and introducing them to each other was yet another level
Hmm.
of building relationships that I thought had a huge advantage to it. So creating these groups, I do this to this day, where we get together as teams of in similar positions, where we don't just bounce ideas off each other one to one, but in groups,
Yeah.
has been very powerful for me. And then the last part I would say is the results of relationships also applies to working with the team, and represents for me a realization I had in my first years as a manager, that my team was really going to go in the direction that we wanted them to go that we wanted them to go in, more because they understood that direction and they understood why we wanted to go there, and they understood who I was and what drove me and us to do these things, right? And so you've noticed this, Kirsten, with our company, having known us for a bit, that we share a lot of information with our
Mm-hmm.
with every level of the team. They
Mm-hmm.
all get to see all of the financials for the entire company. We're good, bad, and ugly. We share that.
Yeah.
And it comes out of that clear understanding that people aren't going to simply follow you because of the position you're in, or they'll do it to some extent, right? They'll do it out
Yeah.
of some respect, fear, maybe. I hope not, but maybe that's what drives them.
But
But they will really get engaged and they will really become self-driven when they understand where you're going, why you're going there, how you intend to get there, and then you say to them, help us get to this great
Yeah.
place, right? Who can argue with let us help more kids? Who can argue with let's make sure these children are getting the best care that they can, which probably means that we have to, there's something inconvenient that we do. Maybe we stay later or we start earlier in order to help a child in this case, right? But people aren't going to do that if they don't understand why we're doing it. And that's and they're not they can hear you say the words, but in order for them to believe me, I first have to build a relationship with them
Mm-hmm.
so that they believe me when I say we're doing this for the kids, right?
Right.
And that doing the right thing for the kids is going to be amazing for the business. They understand that after they've known for me for a while. So that's the results through relationships, right? I think you get results at management level because you have a relationship with the team that is going in the same direction as you are, and your job is to point them and guide them and support them and nurture them as they get there. And then also with peers, right? The same thing. I think building those relationships that helps each of us in some ways, maybe helps the industry we're in as well.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of a
Very long
couple,
answer.
very long answer, but so packed full, and lots of reminders. If listeners have read, Jim Collins, The Five Levels of Leadership, right? That you sort of took us through those levels, and they might follow you for position, but then do they follow you for the vision, right? Walking up those levels. Simon Sinek's The Why, right? Why are we doing this? Why are we here? What is our
John
purpose?
Maxwell's the the five levels of leadership
Yeah,
fall in
yeah,
this
yeah.
line as
Oh, is it
well.
Maxwell? I'm giving the wrong
Yeah,
credit.
it's
Yeah, see,
okay.
there you go. Good. You already corrected me. I love it. Uh, we don't get our first level of leadership, our first position of leadership, and think the way you do. All right. Your first level managers are not as transparent as you are today. What are the steps? How do you get from point A to point B or point Z in this conversation to getting them thinking the way you are, to having them be so open, so vulnerable, so transparent about those kinds of things? Because that's a journey in my experience, but it's one we have
Great
to take them
question.
on.
Yes, and you nailed it, Kirsten. I don't know that we're there yet, right? We're there with some of our team members, probably the ones who have been with us longer,
Mm-hmm.
and understand who we are and have that relationship, or perhaps they came with some innate leadership skills where they were already able to be vulnerable and open and share information. For many of our leaders, sharing information at the level that we encourage them to share is quite scary. It's
Yeah.
never happened before. There can be a variety of reasons why perhaps they don't understand it themselves. That's often one. We tell them it's okay. You don't have to be right 100% of the time. Sometimes it's because of insecurity. Well, if I share all of this and I'm giving everything away, then why do they need me anymore? Totally not true. We need every one of our
Yeah.
managers
Yeah.
in any case, and you're just helping your team by giving them the direction as well. So I would say it is a journey. It's a very long journey. It's not one we ever finish, and some people will not make it through the journey because it's simply just not who they are or what they gather strength from, and that's okay too.
Mm-hmm. And so there's room for people that are at different levels of that journey, and you must have to shepherd them along and
We
show them
do,
how.
and we make allowances for the fact that not everybody's the same. Listen, I'll tell you, when I started as a manager, and my first management job was to manage 5 dialysis clinics in North Central Florida. I wasn't along for this journey either, right? I didn't think the way I think today either. It took
Yeah.
years for me to develop this insight into the importance of building relationships, how building relationships meant that you have to share information and be transparent. You can't just say, listen, I want a relationship with you, and you should then believe what I say. Well, it comes from being open and transparent. And so that journey took time for me. And so we make an allowance, of course, for the time it'll take for others as well.
Yeah. So that's a lot of really vulnerability and humility on the leader of just allowing that time, allowing that process, and being open to, where they are and where the people are that they're leading, and moving towards the goal and having that restated and just creating a community of progress around that target.
Yes, no, as you know, in the field of autism therapy, many of our leaders have been board certified behavior analysts for less than 5 years and leaders for even less than that.
Don't remind
And
me.
so it would be, it would be silly on our part to
Yeah.
not put resources into supporting them, training them, both formally and informally on some routine basis. You've been, Kirsten, a part of that training that you have helped our team grow.
Yeah.
And that is an important part from our perspective. First, understanding there is going to be a need, just given the dynamics and the demographics. And then two, trying to find the most effective way to fill that need and to continue that. It has never been there's never been a process where we said, okay, we'll do these 3 trainings and then you're done.
Yeah.
Then you should
Check.
be able to manage.
Check,
Yes,
check,
done.
check.
Go manage on your own, be transparent, build relations. Like, no, we understand it never stops. It will never stop. We continue every other month to meet as a team in order to grow as leaders. And every single one of us continues to be at those sessions. It's not simply directed at some group of individuals.
Right. These people over here need to get better at that.
Yeah,
But
if only.
we are okay over here. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think one of the special thing that I value in the way you approach the leadership is you've spent time sort of defining what it means to be a leader here, right? What is it about us that's unique about us, the principles that we hold, the beliefs that we have, and how does that translate into our leadership? And so that this is how we behave as a leader. And that approach to me is so valuable because it shows people, your employees specifically, that this is what you can expect out of your leaders. This is, quote unquote, what leadership means to us. And there'll be some people, like you said earlier, that will get on board and it will fit them. And for others, they'll know right away or pretty soon, this is not where I want to lead. It doesn't fit with my style. And companies that can spend the time defining that become more successful at growing leaders than those that just sort of allow that Aubrey Daniels phrase, the mom's leadership, my own style of management, right? Everyone has their own style. Well, that's not good leadership. And you've spent
That's a
the time on
great
that.
observation, I think, Kirsten.
Yeah, and you've spent the time on that. So kudos for that.
Thank you.
What has been one of your most challenging leadership moments? And maybe it comes under the autism field, maybe it doesn't. Something where you've really learned through failure or a trial.
Yeah, I would say that there was a time earlier on in my career, maybe midway through my career, when I took a role anticipating that it was going to be to cover, this part of the business, this part of the country, et cetera. And then for a variety of reasons, I pivoted and I ended up, doing a job that was slightly different. And I ruminated a lot before saying yes to the reassignment and would confess that I did not go into it with the greatest enthusiasm. And it turned out to be one of the greatest experiences I had. I've built relationships with the team that I keep to this day. I understood a part of the world and the United States that I otherwise would never have gotten to know in such detail, and learned a part of the business that I might not have otherwise learned as well. And so I think, when I reflect on that, and we hear this so often, right, Kirsten, people will say, listen, this did not sound like good news in the beginning. It turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
And I would say that was, that was one of those moments for me where it wasn't what I asked for. It wasn't what I was sure I wanted to do either. I had this other exciting opportunity on the side that I really thought that I wanted to do, but I was reassigned. But I feel like it took some time, but I made the most of it, and B, I just found it to be one of the most fulfilling times in my career.
Yeah. What was your worst fear about the assignment? Like, what did you think was going to happen that made it sort of this ominous future?
I'm okay with change. So it wasn't the fact that it was changing. I'm trying to think through the question as you ask because it's an insightful question, Kirsten. It wasn't the fact that it was a change from what we wanted. It was probably the inability to control it. So until that point, everything I did, I was in control of. I would
Ah,
say yes, I would say no. And I had the option, by the way, of saying yes or no here too. But it wasn't something that I felt I could control as easily.
mm-hmm.
And so probably that was the source.
Mm.
Again, very insightful question. You're making me dig deep to
That's
to
okay.
figure out why, but
Yeah,
possibly that inability to have full control was what was scariest about
yeah,
it.
yeah. How does control show up for you today?
It's very that's interesting. Both, both in my private life and certainly at work too. There's a part of me as a leader that still has that feeling of, well, why don't you just do this? Or why doesn't everybody just see what I see?
Oh,
Or
that's my
whatever.
inner monologue.
Yes, that is. And so that's how my need for control shows
Yeah,
up
yeah.
is I still, and in those times when I talk, my inner voice says, well, you don't know if you're right, Fali, right?
Right, right.
So you want to control things to get to this outcome, but what if your premise is wrong and this
Mm-hmm.
outcome is not in fact correct, or this path to this outcome is not in fact the correct one, and there's a much better one, and you're just not seeing it because you aren't being patient or open. And so, it's still there. I've
Mm-hmm.
learned now to control the control need for control better. I don't know. I'm confident I'm not always successful. I'm sure there are times when I'm impatient, but that's how it shows up.
Yeah.
Even in private life, in private life with kids who are now grown, I feel like saying to them, "Well, I know what you need to do. You should just do this." Right?
Right.
But then I say
Right.
to myself, "Well, you don't know. Actually, it's a whole different age. They're different people. They're not you, Folly. They have different goals, and this is a different time. And potentially, your role is just to help them get where they want to get to, not where you
Mm-hmm.
think they can get to."
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So this is the inner dialogue of trying to, trying to manage this innate need for control.
So if I'm hearing you right, my future is this voice is not going to go away in me, but I might evolve a new voice that will be alongside of it that says, now wait, maybe you're not right. And maybe there's a better way, or maybe we can ask a different question, right? So the what I hear is that this tendency that we share is not going to actually going to go away, but we get better at controlling it or sort of keeping it inside.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's spot
Okay.
on. I'll say this. I'll share this often, Kirsten, with the team that I work with. Right,
Yeah.
I tell them in when you are feeling particularly passionate about a subject and about the way you want something to go is probably the greatest time for you to take a step back and give
Mhm.
yourself the allowance that you could be wrong.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, what if I was wrong? Have I backed myself into a corner that's just going to be very difficult? We'll either get the wrong outcome or we're going to force an outcome that the person who's doing the
Hmm.
work is not going to really have engaged in. And so it is a different voice. It takes a lot of practice, clearly not perfect at it by any
Yeah.
means, but knowing it and understanding that this is the dynamic also helps me help my team. I ask them
Yeah.
often that one of our favorite activities to engage in is to come up with a policy and then break it and say, well, what could go wrong? We ask
Mm.
ourselves at the end of putting something together, let's poke holes in this. These are the exact words we use, by the way.
Yes.
Let's poke
Yeah.
holes in this. What could go wrong with this? And then
Yeah.
that way we have anticipated it.
Yeah. Oh, I read a great book you might love if that's a strategy you guys use often. Have you heard the book Red Teaming?
I have not.
You would love it then. It's
I'm going to
all
write that
about
down.
these
Red teaming.
red teaming. It's all about these contrary and other type and imaginary imagination type of strategies for saying, okay, this is our plan now from the enemy's perspective, or what could go wrong? What are the assumptions built into this plan, and how strong are those assumptions? Are there any fallacies or biases in the plan, right? So you basically have the plan and then you attack the plan in a devil's advocate sort of way,
Hmm.
with the
Hmm.
mindset of making it better, not squashing the people who created it for you.
I love
Right.
it.
Yeah, it's excellent. I'll put for listeners, I'll put a link in the show notes. It's I nerded out on it completely, and I think you would like it given that your team doing that strategy. Um, So the podcast here, I talk a lot about three core values, and I'm curious, I'll read them to you, and I'm curious if there's one that resonates more with you as a leader, and if so, how has it influenced your style? So my core values here for the podcast are curiosity, vulnerability, and ownership.
Mm. All three really interesting. Having to pick one is tough. Um, I'll pick curiosity as one of the interesting ones because I also think it's underappreciated
Mm,
on
thank you.
teams and
Yeah.
in leaders, and not just at work, Kirsten. I think going through life with a high level of curiosity, just this is my own personal view, of course,
Hmm.
leads to a more fulfilling life.
Yeah.
So, I routinely find myself asking, well, how does this work? Or
Yes.
how does this device work? Or how does this program work? Or how does this process work?
Hmm.
And having that curiosity at work has allowed me to learn so much about so many different fields, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
First about dialysis machines and water systems, and then about how dialysis patients are treated and all of the clinical work, and then about pets and what's important for them, and now about autism services.
Right.
I would say that's been, that's the one that probably
Yeah.
resonates with me the most because it also then spills over into my personal life,
Hmm.
taking on new hobbies that just represent no real purpose other than to have explored and tried
Yeah.
something new.
Just, I love how you speak about the results of curiosity being fulfilling. I think that's really beautiful. And it reminds me when my kids were young, that was the one of the most beautiful things I loved to watch was when they explored things. When they were learning through one of the things we try to teach the kids with autism, right? The
Right.
contingency-based play. And right, we're trying to they were exploring the world. They didn't know how things worked. They were turning and opening and dumping and just they wanted to know everything. And that mindset is beautiful. And I love how you bring that out in both professional and personal life as adults, right? Why should we lose that? It's beautiful and it's fulfilling, like you said.
Yeah,
I
that's
love
joy.
that. Yeah, it's joy. It's joy. I'm like I can feel my face is brighter. My eyes are full of tears because I'm thinking about how beautiful that was with my kids. I love that. Can I ask you something? I think I've never asked you before. You were born and raised in India, is that right?
Correct.
How does that influence who you are today and how you lead here in this country?
It's a very interesting question. Probably could be another podcast in itself, Kirsten. Um, so, one, coming from one country and immigrating to another one creates this need for assimilation and
Hmm.
an awareness and an opportunity to learn so much.
Yeah.
Uh, I landed in Louisiana
Hmm.
and having, spoken pretty decent English all along, still struggled because of local accents, et cetera,
Yeah,
et cetera.
sure.
But I learned so much just watching television and reading a lot and listening to people and all the people that I worked with as well. So one, I think, growing up in a different country and coming here uh, highlighted the need to assimilate, which has been a hallmark. I think we've moved as a family in just 6 and 7 different places in the United
Wow.
States, and it's been useful for us
Yeah.
I think throughout. But I'll also say probably the greatest advantage for me of having grown up in a different country is a deeper appreciation. I say this and it sounds so judgmental, Kristen, but I don't mean it to be. A
Yeah.
deeper appreciation of how insanely lucky we are
Yeah.
to be in this country with all its faults and all of the things that could be better, right? There's a
Right.
million things that could be better. But how insanely lucky we are to live
Hmm.
at this time in the
Hmm.
development of the world, in this place in the
Hmm.
development of countries and geography, right? And so that level of appreciation, I think, has helped buoy me throughout my life and my career. I just feel I look around sometimes, Kirsten, and I think to myself, how did a little boy
Yeah.
from, this little town in India end up here.
Hmm.
It just defies imagination and expectations. So I feel insanely lucky, I
Yeah.
think, the
Yeah.
other part.
Well, I think if anybody would meet you, I think they would know exactly how you ended up here because you
Thank you.
are amazing.
Well, thank you, Kirsten.
You are
So
amazing. And you touch everybody's life that
big
you interact
words
with. Yeah.
from somebody that I really respect. So thank you.
Well, thank you. So I saved one question for last year. And you said you've been in healthcare, many industries. How has this industry changed you? How has the autism industry changed Folly?
It's a great question, and I think you're going to be a little surprised by the answer, Kirsten. I have uh, never enjoyed a more fulfilling role, knowing that we're helping people, and yet at the same time felt more frustrated and just inadequate
Mm,
because I know of the number. You've heard me say this. We
yeah.
have, hundreds of families who are waiting. That this is the way I look at it, who are waiting for Folly to get his act together so their child can get served and make progress in life and help them move along the trajectory towards whatever their future holds for them. And I feel that I have not adequately addressed those needs, and that
Mm,
remains problem. So, as gratifying as it has been, it has also been probably the most inside. I feel this
sure.
gnawing frustration at not having been able to meet the needs of all of these families, all of these young children who
Yeah.
I imagine looking up at us with imploring eyes, asking
Right.
when is my turn, right?
Yeah.
That's been the most difficult part, I think.
So I can relate, right? No matter how hard you work, you feel inadequate.
Yes,
Yeah.
there's so much to be done
Yeah. Ooh.
for so many children.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Well, if I keep going, I'll just keep crying. All right. So much goodness here. So much goodness in this conversation, Folly. Thank you so much. I hope listeners took a lot away from this. I'll highlight just a couple things that I really am going to walk away with. And your results from relationships is really powerful. And I love the three levels, the sharing both to learn with each other, the connecting people, and then, inside the company, working on a team and helping leaders understand that when we lead through transparency, and I'll add that vulnerability piece, we get followers and we build stronger teams, with real relationships. So I just love that. And I think that's a real powerful message. Your deep appreciation for how lucky we are and what we have to do. And just even tying that into as frustrated as we are and have been in leading in the industry that you're at, right? In autism services, we're still lucky to be the ones doing that, right? It is a privilege, even though we know we are never enough and there are always more families out there. And your curiosity, I think, is a beautiful uh, element that you bring to both your personal life, your professional life, and you tied that in from the beginning, why you weren't in one industry or one position very long. I love where you started and you tied that back into, how you teach your teams. And when you're most passionate about something, that's when you got to get curious because that's when you could be wrong and really fighting that inner voice that we have. So, some really awesome messages today, I think, that will help people no matter where they are in their journey in leadership or life. So, thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you, Kirsten. You used the word privilege. I would add, I feel totally privileged to be on this podcast with you
Wow.
today.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for the opportunity.
Yeah. If people want to find out more about Helping Hands family or you personally, how could they do that?
Our website is www.hhfamily.com. And they will find more contacts both on if they need help for their children or if they would love to join an amazing team that is doing
Yes.
some amazing work. And my email is fairly simple, and I welcome people to reach out. It's Fali, Fali, at hhfamily.com.
Awesome. And I'll have all of that in the show notes as well as the book that we spoke about. So beautiful.
Fantastic.
All right. We'll talk soon. Thank you, Fali.
Thank you very much, Kirsten.
Thank you for joining me today for another great household conversation with the Central PA executive. You can find out more about my guest in the show notes. And if you liked the episode or have something to add to our conversation, please find me on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Subscribe, rate, and review. Remember, leadership is best practiced in community. You know a leader who needs to hear something from this episode, so pay it forward and send it to them today. Don't wait. Until next time, the best leaders not only lead well, they live well and learn well. Bye now.